In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace your clock spring, which is located right behind the airbag in the steering wheel. We're going to have to remove the steering wheel and probably a couple other pieces along the way. So let's get started. With a 10mm socket, go ahead and disconnect your negative battery terminal, and with it off, let it sit for about 10-15 minutes to discharge any capacitors that might still have current in them. You don't want to mess with the airbag with the battery connected, and the airbag capacitors actually do have current in them for a little bit after you disconnect it. To help drain that, you can try flashing the high beams, honking the horn. I know it's not going to do anything and it might look silly, but really what it's doing, it's discharging those capacitors faster. Now that I've waited 5-10 minutes, I'm going to come right over here. This will be on both sides of the steering wheel. You'll see this little cap here, and we'll have to pop that off. You can take a little pocket screwdriver, and you want to take an 8mm socket, go in through this opening, and just unscrew this screw that you see in here, which holds your airbag in place. Take that out, and now we'll do the same exact thing on the other side of the steering wheel. Now you can take the airbag, remove it from the steering wheel, and if you flip it over, it's kind of hard to do because the wires are very tight in here. To disconnect this red one at the top, I'm going to take a little pocket screwdriver, stick it in here, pry up on this tab, and pull the connector right out. There we go. Now you can flip it over a little bit more. You can get to this one on the bottom. The lock for this one is underneath, so press your thumb on it, pull it out, set this aside safely, facing upwards, just in case. Now let's unplug this wire here, the black connector, which is connecting all the steering wheel buttons to the actual vehicle. And then with a T20, unbolt the center bolt. That's the only thing holding on your steering wheel right now. Make sure it's centered, straight, everything is good. Usually with an impact, it's easiest. You can do it by hand as well, too. With this out, if the steering wheel doesn't come right off, go ahead and put it back on. I'm going to get it close to being bottomed out, but I'm not going to bottom it out so that the steering wheel has a little bit of wiggle room. And I'm just going to tap on the steering wheel. Hopefully that'll break it free. Usually it's just seized up on the shaft in there. All right, well, if that doesn't work for you like it didn't for me, hopefully it does. But if it doesn't, you'll have to resort to a steering wheel puller. This is what it looks like. It has two little claws kind of that grab onto the steering wheel. And then you tighten the center shaft. And as you tighten this, it pulls out on the steering wheel. And eventually it should remove the steering wheel. Oh, there we go. It just broke free. Awesome. Now you can slide it right out. Make sure that, again, everything is centered. Remove it. Here's your steering wheel. Set that aside. The good news is this shaft is cut out on both sides, and it has a spline missing right here at the top, but not at the bottom. So there is basically just one way that you can put the steering wheel back on. So that actually helps with lining it back up when you go to put it on, because a lot of times they'll have splines all around. It'll be perfectly symmetrical, and if you're one spline off, your alignment will be great, but your steering wheel is going to be crooked as you drive down the road. So then you have to take it back apart, put it on, and so on. So in this case, that's perfect. We can only put it on one way, so you don't have to worry about marking your steering wheel. Now we'll have to remove the covers that cover the steering column here, and to do that, we have to remove the ignition switch. So take a straight pick, go through this opening here, and then if you can either look through it or just feel for it. Once you turn the key to the on position, you'll feel that it wants to press in on a little pin. Once it does that, and I'll show you what it looks like once it's taken apart, once you press on that little pin, you should be able to wiggle the whole ignition switch straight out. Perfect. Just like that. So this is what you're aiming for right here. You have to just poke it like this, and that releases it, and then you can pull this out. Now you want to take a Phillips head screwdriver and just remove all of the Phillips head screws that hold these two halves together. There should be 3 of them. One is right over here next to the hole that we just went through with the pick, and one is on the other side of that hole, further down. On this side, we'll have to remove the steering wheel adjuster lever So just unscrew that. If you can't, you can just grab it with some pliers. Sometimes if it's the first time that it's being removed, they're a little tight, usually because they have thread lock around the threads. Take this out, and then there's one last screw right over here. Take this one out. With this off, you can pull this lower half down and out. Now before we remove this, we'll have to remove this trim piece that goes around. And all you have to do for this is just pull it straight out on both sides. It's just held on by some push clips or spring clips. And shift it down to make it easier. And now we can remove this top piece, which kind of just slides up and over. If needed, you can tilt the steering wheel down. Sometimes that helps. All right, so now we have access to remove the clock spring and disconnect the connectors. So this wire actually stays on here. Now the wiring that we have to disconnect, if you follow it from right here, first of all, it has a ground wire that goes right to the ignition switch here, so we'll have to figure this out in a second. However, if you follow this yellow wire that goes all the way back, you'll see these two connectors. There's a black one and then a brownish tan one right next to the green one. We don't have to mess with the green one, that one can stay, but those two right there have to be disconnected. And to easily do that, you can do it just by reaching underneath the knee panel here. No need to remove it. So now under the dash, you want to disconnect the black connector. And then this brown one actually has two clips here, but only one does the locking action. So it'll be this one right here next to the black connector. And I'm using a pocket screwdriver to kind of pry this tab away and pull it straight out. There we go. All right, so let's go up top and pull it back out. Now back out here, you can see the yellow wire is still held on by this black retainer here, which has a couple teeth and a clip. So just unclip it and then the wire should be released. Now we have to remove this T20 Torx screw, which holds on this piece here, because we need to get this wire off, and this slides off only once this comes off. So everything's kind of intertwined here. Take this out, slide this off. There we go. All right, so now with this off, you can take this, slide it straight out. And now you can take your clock spring, pull it straight out, another clip that holds this wiring harness here, and there it is. Take our new clock spring. Looks like it comes with a new connector here, a new retainer, but I'm not going to use it because mine is still secured in there. So I'm just going to take it off and reuse my original retainer. It'll be easier. But if yours is broken or you accidentally broke it, that's nice that it comes with a new one. Feed the wires down in there so we can fish them out the other side. We'll get them into the retainer in a minute. For now, I just want this in position. I'll put this piece back in. However, you'll notice on this new one, it has a little cover. You can take that cover off. You can get rid of some debris there and then just slide this into place like that. Now you can just take this clock spring, slide it on, and with it all lined up, press it into place. It's locked in. That's perfect. At this point, we can remove this safety tab here. Now go ahead and take this and line it back up. Slide it in, and let's resecure it. Okay, that's nice and snug. Now back down underneath, let's reconnect the two connectors. The brown one, which is not going to be super easy to press into place. The brown one's not in all the way, but I'm going to connect the black one just so I can get it out of the way, get it secured up here. All right, so that's connected. So now, grab this and press it in really hard. There we go. Make sure this is locked in. Perfect. Let's go back up top. Now let's get the steering column covers back on. It'll be easier to do it now rather than after the steering wheel is already mounted. So slide this over, make sure it kind of falls into place where it needs to go. And then I'm going to put the lower half back in. Make sure this cutout goes around the combination switch. And it does have a couple clips around it that help it snap into place. But obviously the Phillips head screws that we took out are what's going to actually hold it tight together. So let's get those reinstalled. Now we can put this trim piece on. I'm gonna go ahead and shift it so it can be a little bit easier. Press it in, back in park. Put your steering wheel adjuster lever back. Make sure it works. Now you can grab your steering wheel and put that back. Feed the airbag wire through the steering wheel here, the opening for it. Slide it on, and like I mentioned before, it's only going to go on one way. So if you have it off by one tooth, it's not going to slide on. There we go, that's on. I'm going to go ahead and connect this wire for the cruise control buttons. Now go ahead and put on your mounting bolt and tighten it up. And at this point, we can reconnect our airbag. I had this wire down here. The clip was actually facing the airbag. And then this red one up here. Make sure that clicks. Set the airbag in place. Put the ignition switch back. Just line it up, slide it in, and remove your key. Now let's remount the airbag. Thread the bolts on by hand. You don't want these cross-threading, that would be bad. Start them on both sides and then snug up both sides. Don't over-tighten it, just nice and snug. And of course, don't forget to put on this little cap to plug up the hole. Now to reinstall the battery, make sure it's positioned all the way down on the battery post. It's important so it can make a good connection. And then use your 8mm wrench or socket, whatever you prefer, and tighten it back up.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.